Okay, let's do, I think, part 6. Introductory Tournament. Once I had properly recompressed my mana and regained the ability to move normally, I reached out for the bell sitting on the table beside my bed. Before I could even ring it, however, Riarda pushed through the curtains around the bed. She must have heard my rustling around. Finally awake, my lady? You were asleep for 2 whole days, so we were truly starting to worry. We even just only managed to convince that stubborn Ferdinand to come give you an examination. When Justice had reported to Ferdinand that I had collapsed from overexcitement, the only response he had gotten was to push empty face stones against me and wait for my mind to calm down. Even I was exasperated by the fact that I had gotten worked up enough to fall unconscious for 2 whole full days. At the same time, I wondered how Ferdinand was going to react when, after having begrudgingly made the trip here, he found I was already awake. The blood drained from my face. Whoops. As I imagined him glowering at me and unleashing a storm of criticisms, Riarda, I would like to pass out again, until Ferdinand arrives if possible. What are you saying, milady? Everyone's worried to death about you. If your mana has calmed down, we should be heading to the dining hall for breakfast. And so we made our way to the dining hall. The very moment I arrived, everyone turned to look at me. Lady Rosemine, awake at last, Tom, Wolfried said. Uncle said you'd be fine, but I was still worried. What happened with the tea party, I asked as I sat down and started to eat breakfast. Due to Gudrun having been at the tea party, Riarda had immediately moved to direct my attendance and take care of me, so she hadn't been able to tell me what had happened next, or rather, when I had asked. She had just told me to check with those who had actually been there. Not like anyone would just calmly keep drinking tea and enjoying conversation after the host collapsed, Wolfried noted. I had put my weakness on display for all the attending Archduke candidates and their retainers to see, and the tea party had been brought to an immediate close, giving everyone the impression that I would collapse if so much as touched without warning. Lady Hannelore had it the worst of all. Since you collapsed right after she held your hands, he continued. You've got to go apologize to her. She was trying her best to stay composed, but she ended up in tears. Hannelore had apparently fallen into panic, entirely unsure of what to do. Wilfrid had done his best to console her, having endured a similar trauma in the past. Namely, the time he had taken me by the hand and ran off during my baptism ceremony, which ended with me unconscious and somewhat bloody. There had also been another incident during the winter that same year, when a single snowball had knocked me out, which had terrified his friends and guards too. It was safe to say that my health had spawned many legends in Arendvest. I told Lady Hannelore over and over that she didn't need to feel bad, since no matter how shocking it looks, you're always just fine when you wake up. Your retainers who told her that it wasn't her fault, but it just came off as superficial. It didn't help her feel better at all, Wilfrid explained. I ended up walking her all the way to the Dunkelfugger dormitory, explained to Lord Lestalot what had happened at the tea party, and then carefully apologized for having disturbed Lady Hannelore. Understand what that means? The tea party had been held not long after our treasure-stealing dinner match, so Lestalot, who had bitterly called me a trickster and described me as far from being a saint, had apparently glared at Wilfrid and the others with some overwhelming intensity. Sorry for putting everyone through that. I didn't think it'd take you 2 whole days to wake up. The introductory tournament's tomorrow, you know. Besides, why did you even collapse this time? It didn't look like anything happened. It's simple. Lady Hannelore is such an adorable cutie that I got all heated. I opened my mouth to tell him just that, but when I paused, wait a second. Doesn't that make me sound a little bit like a pervert? I should probably dress this up a little. I can say I was really glad to have made a new friend. No, I showed way too much cute excitement for something like that. As I struggled to find a nice-sounding answer, a low, melodic voice came from behind me. I, too, would like to hear why you collapsed, Rosemine. My heart skipped a beat, and such an intense chill ran down my spine that I could have sworn it had turned to ice. Ferdinand is here. Oh, no. Oh, boy. You're gonna have to tell him. I was so taken by surprise that my voice cracked, and I whipped around to see the man himself glaring at me. His eyes were filled with irritation and practically screamed, "You would dare cause problems while I'm so busy?" Eckert was there too, serving as his guard knight. I reluctantly came at Riarda's dogged insistence, Ferdinand continued, but I see now that you have recovered on your own. She woke up right before breakfast, Riarda soothingly informed him. At those words, Ferdinand went from a frosty smile to his usual flat expression. I will hear the details regardless. Come, he said to me. But the Interduchy tournament is tomorrow, and there's a lot I need to prepare. I was indirectly asking Ferdinand to save the lecture for some other time. But he just looked around the dining hall and made a dry announcement. There's no need for you to worry about the Interduchy tournament. It has been decided that you will not be attending. Wait, what? You will not be attending the Interduchy tournament, he repeated. This is the Ob's decision, and one that we will now discuss. Rayarda and Justice will suffice as your attendants. Everyone else prepare for tomorrow. Dazed, I allowed Rayarda to push me into the side room for discussion. Do check up on milady before you start your talk, my boy. I know. Come, Rosamund. I walked up to Ferdinand, who had slowly sat down on a chair. From there, he acted like my family doctor. He touched my neck, my wrists, and investigated me all over. I see your mana has already calmed, he said. Do you understand what happened to you? According to your Justice's report, they could only assume that you had become too excited over the proposed lending and borrowing of books. That's basically it. It had been my first time befriending a fellow bookworm, and my excitement had gotten the better of me. Books were rare and expensive in this world, so it followed that very few made a hobby of reading. I had doubted I would ever find another girl my age who was both a lover of books and of a similar enough status for us to interact casually. For me, Handler was a precious friend whom I could not allow to slip through my fingers under any circumstances. I was so thrilled about making a bookworm friend that I started to offer a prayer. Justice stopped me since praying and giving blessings is abnormal behavior at a tea party, but the mana had already been unleashed within me. It raged in my body until out of nowhere everything went black. So it surpassed your allowance. As expected. That should be fine now that your mana has calmed. The problem will be this new friendship of yours. Who is this girl exactly? Ferdinand asked, fixing me with another glare. I recalled what I had known about Hannelore. She's Lady Hannelore, an Archduke candidate from Dunkelfelder. Her rabbit-like features make her absolutely adorable, plus she's an avid lover of reading. We promised to exchange books. I have a friend with whom I can discuss books now. This is amazing. Fool, you're getting too excited, Ferdinand said, his frustration clear in his voice. He pulled me forward, pressed a face stone against my head, and then promptly replaced the face stone with another. It seems to me that you should avoid this friend. At this rate, you're going to lose consciousness again. I watched as the face stone rapidly changed colors. Would you stop? A clear sign that I was indeed too worked up. Rayarda shook her head as if to say that I was hopeless. Lady Handler was quite troubled when you collapsed, milady. It might be wise to keep your distance for her sake as well. I will contain my excitement, so please do not say such cruel things. Do not... I will contain my excitement, so please do not say such cruel things. Do not take my first bookworm friend away from me. Have you never had a friend who loves books before? The fact that books are rare and have to be made by hand should give you an indicator that no. I have been close with a number of weirdos back in my Arana days, all of whom had different but respectively strong obsessions. Since coming to this world, however, I hadn't made any such friends, neither as mine nor as Rosamine. Even Lutz, who had spent so much time making books with me, couldn't be described as a bookworm. Be quiet! Couldn't be described as a bookworm. To him, books were products, not things to read and enjoy. This is the first book-loving friend I've made since moving here, I replied. Books are so expensive that even nobles tend to not keep very many, no? A mutual appreciation of reading was the reason I was on good terms with Feline, but I was so an Archduke candidate and she a lay noble. We couldn't see each other eye to eye nor share books with one another. She was my retainer, and I couldn't treat her as anything more than that. From her perspective, I was her lady and someone she had to be very careful around. She needed to keep an eye on her surroundings at all times and avoid getting too close. We weren't friends, but rather a lady and her obedient servant. Lady Hannelore, however, is a Dunkelfelder Archduke candidate. She almost certainly has an impressive library. I will need to keep on making as many books as possible, so that I might be able to lend her just as many. It seems that you are not going to calm down for some time. Rayarda, drain her with face stones whenever she gets excited, so the Hermana does not overflow, Ferdinand said as he set a leather bag on the table. I could tell from the visible lumps in the material that it contained 3 large face stones. That reminds me, Ferdinand. Why has it been decided that I won't be attending the Interduchy tournament? I feel perfectly well again. The Ob decided as such after reading Justice's report. Obs from other duchies and royalty are going to be attending the Interduchy tournament, and considering that you could not even make it through your own tea party without ingloriously falling unconscious, he has concluded that it is best for you to remain in bed and avoid causing any further problems. The Interduchy tournament was like a cross between a sports festival and a cultural festival. To put it in Earth terms, it was the biggest event of the year and something that even everyone looked forward to. Not being allowed to attend was just plain cruel. My dissatisfaction must have shown on my face. Ferdinand crossed his arms and shrugged at me. Rosemine, the Interduchy tournament can politically be considered the first stage of the Archduke Conference. And to be honest, with so many uncertainties this year, we do not wish for someone as unpredictable as you to be involved. It would be best for you to develop socializing skills and stamina first. If an aunt from another duchy speaks to you, are you confident in your ability to handle yourself appropriately? And would you be able to avoid collapsing in spite of your proven affinity for spontaneously falling unconscious? Ferdinand paused to look at me, waiting an answer. I took a deep breath. I wasn't confident that I could do either of those things. Just a few days ago, my way of speaking had been enough to make Justice cradle his head in agony. Are my socializing skills really that bad? I asked. Justice says that you are largely competent and that you can socialize while keeping up proper appearances. However, there are times when you say such bizarre things that one feels compelled to ask what in the world inspired them. The fact that you think and act on entirely different bases is likely to blame for that. I sadly hung my head as always. My common sense was not so common here. To make matters worse, I couldn't even tell what it was about my thought process that everyone else found so strange, and without that knowledge, I couldn't be careful and avoid making similar mistakes moving forward. Ferdinand, my boy, my lady is doing the best she can with her poor little body. Her grades are so incredibly high that one would doubt she had actually spent 2 years in the Jareve. She completed the dedication ritual, and she even took part in some socializing. What more could you ask of someone who has so recently woken from a coma? Riarda asked, stepping forward protectively. Ferdinand regarded her with his usual flat expression. I am asking her to rest. Rosemine really completed all that the Archduke requested before she entered the Royal Academy. Or more precisely, she surpassed our expectations far more than is reasonable. We have no plans for her to socialize with royalty, nor did we expect her to form this many connections with greater duchies. At this rate, if she attends the Interduchy tournament tomorrow, we can expect her to bond even further with royalty and the obs of other duchies. Those around her cannot keep up with that any longer, and that is why I ask that she rest and avoid contact with royalty and the obs of any higher-ranking duchies. Ferdinand turned his attention back to me before continuing. Justice's report also included the suggestion that you collapsed due to exhaustion from socializing and preparing for the Interduchy tournament. I thus opted to bring with me several books for you to read while you rest, out of consideration for your health, but would you still rather attend the tournament? Several books, you say? That means, woohoo, a whole day of reading! Resting on one pant of my eternal scale was the Interduchy tournament, and resting on the other was an entire day of reading in my room. Considering that I had been forbidden from even entering the library due to socializing and the tournament, there was only one answer I could give. I am still a poor health, so I believe from the bottom of my heart that it would be best for me to stay and rest in the dormitory with Riarda. However, what will my retainers do? We expect to be short on hands, and I would like for them to all participate in the Interduchy tournament. My resting meant that some of my retainers would need to stay in the dormitory, and that certainly wasn't ideal when we were so short on people and resources. I will remain in the dormitory as your supervisor, so you will not need retainers. You should be able to survive the day with just Riarda. Wait, what? Ferdinand supervising me? No thanks. That was a surefire way to turn my day of reading into a day of non-stop lectures. I thought as hard as I could of ways to get rid of him. Ferdinand, shouldn't you be attending the Introductory tournament? Please don't feel compelled to stay here with me. The plan was for me to attend the tournament as your guardian and to support you during any negotiations with higher-ranking duchies. But it seems that things have gotten too troublesome from that, he said with a glare. But I returned only a quizzical look. What was so troublesome about our situation? Justice has informed me of the headache-inducing reality that bizarre legends of my past are circulating the Academy, Ferdinand continued, answering my question before I could even ask it. It has reached the point where he believes my casual appearance at the tournament might cause quite an incident, which is utterly absurd. What in the world did you do? The legends of Ferdinand. Please do not try and blame me for every little problem, I replied. Professor Herscher publicly referred to me as your disciple, and so everyone began to speak of your student days in the Royal Academy. I will not deny that the legends have gotten a little mixed up with the exploits of others, now being attributed to you and the like, but I am completely uninvolved here. I am told that you instructed the students to gather stories about Lord Ferdinand as you expected him to be an easy topic of conversation at tea parties, milady. Justice! Shh! I frantically tried to shut him up, but it was too late. Ferdinand was already staring daggers at me. Uh-oh. But I mean, it technically wasn't her fault at first. The professors were already talking about all his days at the academy back then. And I think that started with the music professors talking about how they hated that puberty had changed his voice to where it is now, but I think it was better now. We don't know, though, how it sounded then, so... yeah. You can't completely blame her for that one. It was the day of the Interduchy tournament, and more importantly, my first day of reading in a very long time. Everyone finished breakfast early, and then rushed to continue preparations. A sweet aroma had been pervading the dormitory for 7 days now, as those in the kitchen prepared a copious amount of sliced pound cake. The same heavenly scent also wafted from a number of pound cake-filled boxes. We had recently been receiving a consistent stream of packages from Ehrenfest containing supplies for the Interduchy tournament. The apprentice attendants checked each one, sent out any necessary instructions, and then had the servants carry them where they needed to go. Wilfrid was currently out by the stadium where the tournament was due to be held, likewise giving instructions. The apprentice scholars were diligently writing down the key points Ferdinand and Justice were giving them about the research for his dissertations. The most important one of all, apparently, was to hide the fact that Ferdinand was here. Professor Herscher will abandon her presentation and rush to the dormitory to discuss research if she learns of my presence, so speak of me to no one. Yeah, you really don't want her to come barreling into the dormitory. I think it would be, the 4th-5th time she's done that if she does that? The apprentice knights had exited the dormitory through a side door and were now receiving something of a lecture from Eckert about the weak points of various Fabies and how to attack them. It seemed the students were easier to deal with now that they had overcome their ignorance and recognized their complete lack of cooperation skills. Eckert was pretty pleased about that, since he was in charge of training new recruits in the Knights Order. These apprentices humbly listened to his teachings. They would apparently be a lot more skilled next year once Bonifacius trained them in the spring. Oh, definitely. Ob Ehrenfest has arrived, came an announcement. First the Archducal couple, then the guardians of graduating students arrived in the busy dormitory. They were all wearing extravagant clothing for socializing and passed right through the dormitory on their way to the stadium. They had all previously graduated from the Royal Academy, so they did not need any guidance. Finally, awake Rosemine, Sylvester asked. You should spend the day resting here in the dormitory. You still look a little sick. I thank you ever so much for your concern, I replied. I personally thought I was looking healthier than ever. The sheer bliss of now having an entire day to read had worked wonders. But if Ob Ehrenfest said you look sick, then you look sick. No questions asked. I will be resting in my room. Ferdinand, take care of Rosemine. Don't let her leave the dormitory. As you wish. Oh, he will not let her leave. If he has anything to say about it, he will not let her leave. Even if she was to try and, I don't even think they have air ducts. If they had air ducts in that place, she would not even be able to get into them and get away. The dormitory calmed somewhat once the visitors had all passed through, but then the apprentice knights returned. It seemed they had to start standing by in the stadium now. Lady Rosemine, may we ask for a blessing? If you would be so kind as to kneel, then certainly. I will grant you all a blessing from Ungriff. The apprentice knights knelt in rows and bowed their heads with Angelica the Six-Year at the front. Just like always, I conjured my staff in my right hand, raised it to the air, and started filling it with mana. O God of War Ungriff, of the God of Fire Leidenschaft's exalted 12, I pray that you grant them your divine protection. Blue light shot from my staff and rained down upon the apprentices. I ask that you all use what you've learned to the best of your ability, that you keep an eye on your surroundings and work with one another. I pray that Ehrenfest is able to secure the best results possible. Understood. Once everyone had gone, I spent my time leisurely reading the books Ferdinand had given me in the common room. Aside from the apprentice scholars and Justice popping in to ask Ferdinand for late instructions, it was peaceful. Ferdinand was reading responses from reports from Justice, of course, as well as varied documents that had been organized by Wilfrid and Charlotte's and my apprentice scholars. The papers were apparently homework that Ferdinand had given them through Justice as part of their scholar training. Third bell rang, and a delicious smell began drifting in from the kitchen. It wasn't long before the scholars and attendants returned in staggered groups to eat lunch. Lady Rosemine once said, "The tournament this year is proving to be quite something. I've never seen Ehrenfest receive so many visitors before," replied another. The returning students excitedly told me about the introductory tournament. As it turned out, even researchers from the Sovereignty had approached us with gleaming eyes to discuss the research on Schwartz and Weiss. Herscher had happily explained what she had learned, and they had engaged in lively discussion about solutions to the gaps that remained in the magic circles. It seemed that the shoe mill variations of my drivable high beast had also been put on display, and the idea of not having to change into riding clothes had drawn the attention of many women. "Even though you were not there, it felt as though your name is known to all, Lady Rosemine." The commander of the Dunkelfelder Knights came too, asking for the Archduke candidate considered to be Ferdinand's disciple. I wasn't the only one to grimace at that news. Ferdinand did too. His frown seemed to suggest that he knew exactly who this knight commander was. Maybe they had attended the academy together, and this was the man Ferdinand had beaten to a pulp using his devious strategies. "It seems that I was wise to not attend," Ferdinand said. "Since we have not yet spoken of your recovery, Lady Rosemine, Klassenberg's and Dunkelfelder's Archduke candidates came with their guardians and offered us gifts to help with your illness." Ehrenfest was quite tense as he handled them. "Wow! Fight, Sylvester, fight!" As we talked, the apprentice knights all returned at once. It seemed their battle had ended. The atmosphere was somber, not excited, and everyone but Angelica looked at me with a conflicted expression. Had their blessing not been enough to help them? "Cornelius, how did the game of dinner go?" I asked. "Still not as good as one would expect for our rank, but compared to previous mock battles, we slew the Fabies incredibly fast." "You all seem rather solemn for an achievement like that." Cornelius glanced at the other apprentices and then grimaced. "We had to fight a Grun, and considering that you used one as your high beast, it was a bit... I do not actually know what Gruns are. What manner of Fabiest are they?" "They are foul-smelling and truly vicious." "Wait, they smell?" I was hit with a sudden wave of regret, but Ferdinand interjected before I could speak again. "Apprentices, save the Grun discussion for later. Finish lunch and then assist the attendants. I was being told there were so many visitors that they do not have even the manpower to properly turn and get people away." The apprentice knights snapped to attention, then wolfed down their lunches, and then rushed back outside again. Once the dining hall calmed down a bit, Ferdinand and I started eating lunch ourselves with Riarda serving us. "I do feel like this has been unfair for you," Ferdinand muttered as we ate. "What do you mean?" "Forbidding you from attending the introductory tournament." "Forbidding you from attending the introductory tournament. Missing the tournament means you will also miss the award ceremony." According to Ferdinand, the competition part of the introductory tournament ended around 5th bell, at which point they would announce each year's honor students. Herscher said in the letter, "You are likely to be first in class. Under normal circumstances, you will be receiving direct praise from the king, and look basking in the praise of all, and yet, due to our circumstances, you have been denied this. I'm glad that I'm missing it, actually. I couldn't speak to the king as I am now. I would practically die speaking to the king after being crowned the top of my class in a place where all the royals and Archduke candidate couples were in attendance. Just thinking about all the ways I could mess up was terrifying. I hope that you will be able to attend the introductory tournament next year, but thinking of ways to educate you is quite the struggle. Your thinking and culture differ fundamentally from ours, and I do not know what to do about it. I have tried already, and the results are as you see. Milady was raised in the temple, so it's only natural she would think differently from most nobles. She just needs to get used to it. Time heals all wounds," Riarda said with a calm smile. "She's lived as an Archduke's daughter for a year and a half since being baptized, and then she slept for 2 years before entering the Royal Academy. If you subtract the time she spent in the temple, she only lived as a noble for about half a year. Everything will surely get better soon." Ferdinand had quite a precise memory. He began counting the number of days I had actually spent in the castle as a noble. "It is more than half a year, but she certainly has spent only a short amount of time in the castle. It does not feel that short to me, but I also educated her in the temple, but..." "You're the only noble in the temple, my boy. The blue priests technically don't count. Milady won't ever learn how to think like a noble while she's there. The castle, on the other hand, is filled with nobles." "I see," Ferdinand said with a nod. "You always want immediate results, but raising people takes time. Take your time." Riarda was right. Raising people took time, and the temple wasn't like the castle at all. There I didn't have to be tense at all times, since there weren't nobles surrounding me. I could guess then that any recreated education plans from Ferdinand would have me spending a lot less time in the temple. That sucks. I knew that Riarda was right, and that I needed to sort out my socializing skills, but if the solution involved taking away the one place I could feel at peace, then I felt nothing but miserable about it. Angelica's graduation ceremony. The graduation ceremony would take place the day after the introductory tournament. The archducal couple had rooms in the dormitory, but all the other parents would need to return to Ehrenfest for the night. That explains why so few came to watch the tournament. So many consecutive days of teleporting required a lot of mana. For this reason, mid-noble and late-noble guardians couldn't come unless they already knew that a relative would have a position of honor, or unless their relative wanted to marry someone from another duchy. Angelica's father was more concerned about seeing her sword dance in the graduation ceremony than the game of dinner, so he would be coming tomorrow after taking a day off work. Incidentally, Angelica's mother served as Florencia's attendant, so she had seen the game today alongside her lady. Laisleda had said she would have tomorrow off. Angelica really is the lone knight in a family of excellent attendants. The graduation ceremony was due to begin at third bell. There would be a dedication whirl and sword dance performances, then the High Bishop of the Sovereign Temple would come to give a blessing. It was also a coming-of-age ceremony, though that was treated as just a part of the day's events. In the afternoon, the graduating students would gather in the hall for graduation ceremony while wearing their best clothing. "I'll be staying home for that too, right?" I asked Ferdinand in the common room after dinner. He had said that he would be staying in the Royal Academy overnight, so I assumed he was going to be supervising me tomorrow as well. "The same important figures who attended the tournament will be attending the ceremony. Your attendance will make all that we did today entirely meaningless. Or what, are you dead satisfied with reading books in the dormitory?" I knew there was no chance for me to participate in the graduation ceremony after missing the tournament, but still, I was really curious to see Eglantine dedication whirl and Angelica swords dance in maximum power, the latter of which I had never seen since swords dancing was practiced in a separate location from whirling. The fact that these were once-in-a-lifetime dances only served to intensify my enthusiasm. I am quite happy to be reading, but I would have liked to see Lady Eglantine's dedication whirl and Angelica's swords dance. If only we had a video camera. And what is that exactly? Something which could record the performance and allow me to view them again later. Remember the magic tool that Professor Hersher used in her lectures? Think of it like that, but it captures motion as well. Ferdinand marginally raised an eyebrow. Hersher does have a recording magic tool. She used it once during a lecture, I recall, but it took such a ridiculous amount of mana that she sheathed it soon after. If you were to move your mana to a face stone and activate it, perhaps it would last long enough for the swords dance and the dedication whirl. "Really?" I exclaimed. "I can't believe there's already a magic tool that works like a video camera." I gazed up at Ferdinand with hopeful eyes, spurring him to take out his ordnance face stone with a displeased grimace. "The problem is, doing this will inform Hersher of my presence," he said, "although I suppose it cannot be helped if it is for the sake of keeping you docile. Pour your mana into these face stones. The recording will cut out part way if you do not provide enough." Ferdinand handed me some face stones and then began sending his ordnance to Hersher. In the meantime, I dutifully carried out my task as a battery. I gripped the face stones one after another and filled them with my mana. It was an easy work since my excitement was making mana course through my body. I get to see the swords dance and dedication whirl. Just as I was beginning to wonder when we would hear back from Hersher, I received my answer. Her response did not come via an ordnance, however. She threw open the dormitory door and rushed inside, carrying a magic tool and a bundle of documents in her hands. "Ferdinand, why didn't you tell me you were here sooner? There's so much we must discuss about the documents you sent me." "I imagined you would say that and abandon the introductory tournament, so I opted not to contact you despite how rude that may have been." "It is good to see you again, Professor Hersher. Does the magic tool still work?" Ferdinand asked. His tone was more polite than usual, but he still plucked the tool from Hersher's hand and started fiddling with it. "What do you need it for after all this time? I tossed it away long ago due to how much mana it requires." "The need arose to record tomorrow's performance. Rosemine will provide the mana, which eliminates that problem." "Good, it still works. I appreciate your continued dedication to performing regular magic tool upkeep. If only you would send reports as regularly." Hersher didn't respond. It seemed that she had ignored everything that wasn't convenient to her. Instead, she started spreading the documents she had brought out onto the table. "Getting back to the library tools, these are all the theories I've crafted alongside the many researchers who approached me at the introductory tournament," she explained. "Some of them were researching the royalty's magic tools and the sovereignty and were familiar with what they saw, which would mean that this part of the magic circle likely has to do with the god of life. However, the magic circles they recalled did not seem to match completely." Interesting. What manner of magic tools circles were they? And so the discussion between mad scientists began. The scholars listened on with interest, though their expressions gave way that they understood nothing of what was being said. Of course. Once I had finished pouring mana into the last phase stone, I swiftly exited the room. I cared more about the books that Ferdinand had brought for me than their incomprehensible ramblings about magic circles. I went back to my room and took a bath, and then went to sleep. I headed to the common room after breakfast the next day, only to find Ferdinand and Herschel still discussing things in the exact positions they had been in the night before. Only the increased number of strewn about documents revealed how much time had passed. Eckert was leaning against the nearby wall with a determined grimace, presumably having stayed up all night with them. It seemed that even when Ferdinand had these overnight research talks, his guard knights were forced to accommodate him. Maybe this had been a regular occurrence for them when they were attending the academy? Ferdinand, Professor Herschel, good morning to you both. Are you still talking? Would it not be wise to at least eat breakfast? Ah, Rosamund. Morning already, then? Professor Herschel, today is the graduation ceremony. I believe we should end this here for now. The graduation ceremony, And we were making such great strides, too, Herschel said with a look of genuine vexation. Ferdinand shook his head, exasperated. You will have to make do for today. You are weeping about having no successes, but you have found a promising disciple, no? Indeed, it took much longer than I would have liked, but there's a promising student in this term's batch of second years. It's unfortunate that there are men noble with so little mana that they're almost a lay noble, but in terms of improving designs, they're quite excellent indeed. Ferdinand was a genius when it came to coming up with ideas and finding things to focus on, and this had led to him developing all sorts of unique, one-of-a-kind magic tools. However, because he had so much mana, he often invented things that only he could use. Herschel's new potential apprentice was currently absorbed in researching whether there was a way to reduce those mana costs. Thanks to this apprentice, I feel as though I've returned to my glory days. My time is filled with lively research and discussion. You said that nothing but boredom and melancholy awaited you following your graduation, Ferdinand. But did that come to pass? Have you found at least a little joy in Ehrenfest? Herschel asked, her expression swapping from that of a mad scientist to that of a teacher concerned about her pupil. In a rare development, Ferdinand faltered. He gazed into the distance, a deeply nostalgic look in his eyes, and then answered with a hint of wryness. My days are quite lively now. They are anything but dull. That is a relief. I'll be waiting to hear from you, whether it be about new magic tools, research results, or even attempts at romance. Herschel said. She then gathered up her documents and swiftly left for the dining hall. It seemed that she needed to hurry and prepare for the graduation ceremony after breakfast. Justice came in from the dining hall, as if swapping places with her. What will you do now, Lord Ferdinand? He asked. Will you prioritize sleep? Yes, wake me up around 2:30 bell. As you wish, rest well. Eckert, shouldn't you get some sleep too? I've got plenty since I'm stuck with Traga, but it must have been rough for you having to deal with these two again. Eckert glared at Justice, then followed after Ferdinand. Why did you leave the dining hall, Justice? I asked. I was serving Traga when Professor Herschel came in. So I knew the research discussions had finally wound down. Does that mean you've abandoned Traga in the middle of his meal? What choice did I have? Lord Ferdinand is much more important. He takes priority. After that casual statement, Justice smiled and returned to the dining hall. Traga is only allowed one adult attendant in the academy like everyone else. And they're prioritizing someone else? Judith whispered. I'm starting to feel kind of bad for him, knowing that his meals and baths are being ignored for Lord Ferdinand's sake. Well, that's how dedicated the guy is to him. As students finished their breakfast and started filtering into the common room, the parents of graduating students began teleporting in. The apprentice students who had been waiting for them guided them to their children's room. Attendants who waited for them guided them to their children's rooms as they came out of the teleportation hall. The parents needed to help their children prepare for the graduation ceremony, or rather they wanted to see for themselves that everything was in order. Father, Mother, Layslida welcomed her parents, but they ignored her, moving to greet me before even thinking of going to Angelica's room. Lady Rosamund, it is good to see you. On this day, I waved a hand to interrupt them. No need for a formal greeting, there's not much time today. Layslida, guide your parents to Angelica's room. Her laziness will no doubt cause her to slacken her preparations, and she will need the three of you there to keep her in line. This is an order from me. Her preparations for the sword dance might have been perfect, but she would slack on her formal attire for the graduation ceremony and pick a plain hairstyle for the dance without giving any consideration to looking flashy. She just couldn't be trusted to prepare on her own. With her parents and little sister watching over her as three skilled attendants, however, not even she could get away with slacking. I understood this, and I gave me a half smile and then took her parents out of the common room. That solved the Angelica problem. I nodded to myself only for Daniel to enter the common room for some reason. He looked around, walked over to me, and then knelt. Daniel, why are you here? I asked. Lord Ferdinand sent an urgent request last night. Due to most of your retainers leaving for the graduation ceremony, he asked me to serve as your guard today. Okay, that's fine. It seemed that Ferdinand had planned his nap in the morning after spending an entire night discussing research with Herschel from the very beginning. Now that Daniel is here, you can all go prepare for the graduation ceremony, I said to my attendants. They got to work on their respective tasks, and after seeing them off, I turned back to Daniel. How has the castle been? Is grandfather doing well? His eyes turned vacant, and the smile disappeared from his face as though he had remembered something terribly unpleasant. "Yes," he answered after a pause. "Lord Bonifacius has been very, very lively. He charged into the Knight's Order and spoke with the higher-ups about training the recruits. I imagine the apprentices will have quite the painful spring." Oh, boy. Daniel spoke sympathetically, but I was glad that Bonifacius was motivated. I could expect good things from this. 2:30 bell was when all the students, save for the graduates and their escorts, would be leaving the dormitory together. They would be preparing the hall before the graduating students arrived. Amid the crowd of attendants waving their lords and ladies off, I saw Justice disappear to wake up Ferdinand. As expected, he was prioritizing him over seeing off Traugott. "Riarda, this is just too sad," I said. "Could you please help Traugott for a moment?" "I'm afraid not. Putting aside that you have no other attendants right now, I cannot leave your side with so many people passing by," Riarda explained, flatly rejecting the idea. I gave a curt nod. If she said no, that was that. A short while after the students had departed, Ferdinand arrived back in the common room. He was with Justice and Eckert, and to my surprise, Eckert was wearing formal clothes that were unfamiliar to me. "That is an unusual outfit for you to wear on guard duty, Eckert," I observed. "Is something happening?" "What? Excuse me?" "I can hardly wear my armor when escorting Angelica, can I?" "What? You're escorting Angelica?" I widened my eyes in surprise, which made Eckert widen his in turn. "You didn't know? Hasn't everyone in the dormitory been gossiping about who's escorting whom?" "Letta seemed to know, but nobody else. We were all trying to guess who it was going to be, but Angelica only ever stared at us quizzically when we asked. So most of us just concluded that her parents had made a decision for her without telling her. When did you two get so close?" Eckert had come to the dorm with Ferdinand yesterday, but he hadn't had any friendly conversations with Angelica since then. Nor had they seemed to exchange any furtive glances. No matter how you looked at it, they didn't look like a couple in love. We didn't. Grandfather has been thinking about marrying Angelica to someone in the family ever since he took her as a disciple. He didn't make his decision before the deadline, so she might not have actually known who was chosen. She simply said to Bonifacius, "I'll leave it to you, master." Of course she left everything to Bonifacius and stopped thinking entirely. This winter sure was a struggle, what with the grandfather demanding that Angelica be wedded to our family, Eckert sighed. Marrying one of Bonifacius' descendants meant wedding into a family that was closely connected to the Archducal family. It was a great honor under most circumstances, but it was also far more status than a men noble like Angelica would normally receive. Not to mention, while she was strong as a knight, she completely lacked the personality and socializing skills expected of an archnoble's first wife. Her parents had desperately searched for any way whatsoever to avoid the marriage, but it was far beyond them to overturn a decision from someone like Bonifacius. Exhausted, defeated, and anxious about their daughter's future, they had suggested to Elvira that Angelica become second wife to one of Bonifacius' grandchildren of a suitable age. They had initially tried pushing for her to become a third wife, but Bonifacius simply wouldn't tolerate the idea. And in the end, after some back-breaking negotiations, she was secured a place as a second wife. The question was, whose second wife would she be, Eckert continued. The plan had initially been for her to become Traugott's second wife. Wait, Traugott's already got a wife? Huh. Or he's going to? Whatever. Angelica had no thoughts of marriage herself. She was a somber, beautiful young woman who cared only about getting stronger, and so her parents had thought she would be better with a younger boy who wouldn't marry her right away, unlike an adult man. Traugott had also been planned to become my guard knight, which would have made them a good pair. Unfortunately, Traugott had resigned from serving me, and not under pleasant circumstances, considering I had pretty much fired him. He had earned Bonifacius' wrath, and in turn lost any chance of marrying Bonifacius' beloved disciple Angelica. We didn't just have to talk about Traugott's future at the family conference, with the graduation ceremony looming over us. We also had to rethink Angelica's marriage partner. It ultimately came down to a decision between my brothers and me. Given that they wanted someone younger, I guess Lampert and Cornelius were the first picks, I asked. Eckert must have been last in line considering Angelica's age. That's right, but we didn't want to involve Lampert while the Ehrenbach business was still going on, and Cornelius had said previously that he didn't want to escort Angelica because he has feelings for someone else. It ended up falling on me, the widower. After so many years of sticking to his guns about not taking a wife until Ferdinand did, wow. Well, you're gonna wait for a while on that one, dude. It seemed that Eckert would finally be getting married. It was time to pay the piper, or rather, maybe it wasn't. Realization struck me. And since Angelica has no intention of getting married for some time, you can avoid Mother pestering you about marriage without having to take any action yourself. Precisely, he replied with a smile. It was evident that he still didn't intend to get married for years to come, so in a way, he and Angelica were a good match. The only problem was that Eckert had agreed largely for his own personal gain, while Angelica had most likely agreed without spending so much as a single second thinking about it. Lord Eckert, thank you for waiting. Angelica's parents returned to the common room with the dressed-up Angelica in tow. She was clad in leaden shaft blue to symbolize her strength, and while one might assume she was wearing a skirt at first glance, she was actually wearing culottes, the same piece of clothing used for riding gear. Their hem was long enough to hide her shoes due to her having coming of age. I balked a little, especially when I saw her bundled up hair in the style adult women wore. Angelica, with the added benefit of a light layer of makeup, looked so stunning that not even I, someone who had already spent so long basking in her beauty, could believe my eyes. I see they've made you quite beautiful. I'm looking forward to your sword dance, Eckert said casually. I hope to perform the best sword dance ever. Angelica replied, smiling softly as Eckert took her hand. In that moment, they looked like a heroic knight and a bashful, innocent princess, but no matter how perfect they appeared on the outside, it was the inside that I was really worried about. Are you sure you're fine with Eckert, I asked, before anything else? Angelica nodded without any hesitation. I said that I would trust my master with this, and this is what he has arranged. He has my full trust. Though I do feel bad for Eckert. He could be anyone for all I care, so long as I continue to serve you, Lady Rosamund. What a blunt, Angelica-like thing to say. I was equally impressed and exasperated, but I accepted her reasoning. Her parents, however, went pale. What do you mean he could be anyone for all you care? That's incredibly disrespectful to Lord Eckert. After lambasting her at once, they pleaded to Eckert to rethink escorting someone so shameless. They were desperate to get Angelica out of this picture entirely, but Eckert blew them off with a casual smile. That would make Grandfather angry with me. Not to mention a girl so uninterested in love and romance is a perfect match for me right now, he replied. At third bell, Eckert escorted Angelica out of the dormitory. They had with them the video camera magic tool that Ferdinand had made, and the face stones I had packed full of mana. Please do remember to record Angelica's and Angletine's performances, dear brother, I reminded him as they went. And with the last of the graduating students out of the dorm, it was time for me to resume my idyllic reading. Meanwhile, Damien was going through some paperwork in the process of being worked to the bone by Sir Ferdinand. Everyone returned after fourth bell. They had lunch, and then the graduating students began to the graduation ceremony to check their clothes to make sure everything was in order. Angelica, having performed her sword dance, had to go and put on some more formal attire. She would be leaving as soon as she finished changing. Now then, Eckert, show me the sword dance and dedication whirl, I asked, since he seemed to be doing nothing while he waited. Rather than doing it himself, however, he handed the tool to Ferdinand. Playing the video apparently required a great deal of mana. I cannot spare the mana right now, considering that I need to escort Angelica at the graduation ceremony, Eckert explained. So I have to wait then? No, Ferdinand replied, fiddling with the tool. It does not have to be Eckert's mana. You can display the image with your own if you wish. Simply pour your mana into this face stone when it is ready. It seemed that some preparations needed to be made before I could use the magic tool. As he worked on that, groups of graduating students started leaving for the ceremony. Those escorting students from other duchies would be meeting them in tea party rooms. Angelica, congratulations on graduating. It's thanks to you that I'm graduating at all, Lady Rosamund. I needed to show my gratitude. Thank you ever so much. Angelica said, bowing her head and kneeling before me. Her parents and Liz later did the same. Our entire house expresses its gratitude, Lady Rosamund. It is thanks to the assistance of you and Angelica's allies that she stands here today. They said it seemed that Angelica's parents were quite moved by her graduation, since they had steeled themselves for her expulsion. Eckert, take care to escort Angelica properly and not let any cracks show. I trust that you will know what to do, dear brother. He ruffled my hair, then he took Angelica by the hand, and the two of them went on their way. The other graduating students left after them, and once the guardians and archducal couple were gone, only students unrelated to the graduation ceremony remained. Ferdinand, is the tool ready? I asked, upon my return to the common room. He gave a brisk nod in response. Several nearby students were peering at the video camera magic tool since they hadn't seen anything like it before. The recording is displayed on this board, so position it in a way that is easy for you to see. Then begin pouring in your mana, he explained. There was a smooth metal board about the size of an A4 sheet of paper that gleamed all the colors of the rainbow when touched by the light. It looked similar to the guild card that I had. eagerly started pouring my mana into the tool, and the recording began on the board. The gathering crowd of students all made odd noises. "It's the sword dance," one said. "Incredible. I've never seen a magic tool like this before." "Show me too, Rosemine," Wilfred said as he pushed closer for a better look. He and all of his retainers were squished together behind me. In all honesty, the video quality was rather poor. There was color, but there wasn't any sound, and the resolution left a lot to be desired. Still, I was glad to see the two performances I had missed. "Is that Stenlook?" I asked. "Uh-huh. Angelica did the sword dance with Stenlook. She let sparks of mana fly with each swing as the blade glowed blue. It was the most breathtaking sight ever," Judith told me with a happy smile, her love and respect for Angelica oozing out of every word. It seemed that even in the Royal Academy, not too many people wielded mana blades. Both growing and using them required mana, so basically 0 men nobles used them. There were other female knights participating in the sword dance, but Angelica clearly stood out among them. The sight of a young beauty freely manipulating a glowing blade was so alluring that it was hard to look away. "That was splendid," I said with a wistful sigh, once the dance was over. But the recording of the dedication whirl began immediately after. It seemed that Eckhart wanted to preserve as much mana as possible, so there was no time for me to get lost in thought. Eglantine began the dedication whirl with graceful hand movements. I could hear the music in my head, considering I had practiced the same whirling myself, and started to hum as I watched Anastasius join her in the dance. He must have been taking his practicing pretty seriously, as they actually look like a good pair now. "Oh, Prince Anastasius is a lot better at whirling now." I had thought it would be a bit awkward for them to be a clear skill gap between them playing the parts of the king and queen gods, so it made me very happy to see that Anastasius had worked hard to match her talent. They warmly smiled at one another when their eyes crossed amid the whirling. It was such a heartwarming sight that I wanted to bless them for here. Okay, I'll bless them both. "May their happy smiles be protected forever." "Rosemine, take your hands off the face," Stone came a shout. "What?" I glanced up just in time to see Ferdinand sprinting over. There was a surprising intensity in his expression as he grabbed my wrist and pulled them above my head, in what was half of the praying pose. The light of a blessing shot out of my ring and flew off somewhere. "What in the world were you thinking?" he asked. Oh boy. I just thought it'd be nice for Prince Anastasius and Lady Eglantine's happiness to last forever. Oh, and I decided to bless them. What are you thinking? I have to agree. My blessing had, to perhaps nobody's surprise, disappeared in the direction of the hall. I could imagine the light had suddenly shot in and rained down on the couple midway through the graduation ceremony. It had presumably created quite a stir. "Ferdinand, is it possible to take back blessings?" "Of course not, fool." "Darn. Is the ceremony going to be thrown into a single bit of chaos?" "I do not know, but feign ignorance no matter what anyone asks you. All those present now understand that this blessing is not to be spoken of. You will suffer a fate worse than death should anything leak." Ferdinand's deadly expression made it clear that his threat was in no way a joke. The students, having had little interaction with him before, trembled in place as they vigorously nodded their understanding. I think you would manage to cause problems even while essentially under house arrest. Good grief, Ferdinand rubbed his temple and let out a deep, deep sigh. "Sorry, Ferdy, I didn't do it." Ferdy! You better not call him that out loud! He's gonna have a cow if you did that. If you called him Ferdy out loud in public, or even in private, he will have a conniption and tell you to never say that again. Okay, do I want to continue? I want to continue, but do I have time to continue? Do I have time? No. Sorry, guys. This will have to wait till tomorrow. But I am off tomorrow and Monday, so yeah. Get to enjoy more of that.